Now, every time I hear this particular piece of music from Schindler's List, it sends shivers down my spine. For me, the music immediately brings to mind the horrors of Auschwitz. But no matter how vivid a picture painted by Steven Spielberg, none of us could really imagine what it was like to have been there. Of all the horrors of Auschwitz, one of the most grotesque was the infamous Auschwitz laboratory of Dr. Joseph Mengele.
Dr. Josef Mengele arrived at Auschwitz in May 1943. There had been medical experiments conducted at the camp before his arrival. At least 2 German doctors had been examining new methods of sterilizing men and women at Auschwitz since 1942. And in the process, hundreds had already suffered. But Mengele began a variety of new experiments, each related to his own obsessions. He saw Auschwitz as a human laboratory, one which allowed him to pursue any idea he had, no matter how bestial or inhumane. He experimented on children, particularly on twins. It is thought that Mengele used these children to research the power of genetic inheritance, an area of interest to many Nazi scientists. Children were installed in special barracks for Mengele's exclusive use.
Mengele carried out scientific experiments on 3,000 twins at Auschwitz. Only 180 survived. One of the survivors is Menachem Bodner, now aged 72 and living in Israel. In the past couple of years, Menachem has received proof that his identical twin also survived Auschwitz, and he's now set about trying to find the brother he last saw in 1945 when they were just 4.5 years of age. Helping Menachem with his search is Ayana Kimron, who's a professional genealogist based in Israel. I spoke to Ayana earlier, and she began by telling me more about some of the experiments carried out by Mengele at Auschwitz.
He went to Auschwitz and established the medical experiments regime, to which he took as guinea pigs inmates who were, majority of them, I would say maybe 100% of them were Jewish, but I'm not sure because I didn't investigate into that part of the regime. But anyway, it was medical experiments on human beings, all kinds of medical experiments that concerned genetics, probably.
Some of the survivors I saw on the television programme the other day were talking about being injected with poisons. One lady was saying that she was literally sewn back to back with her sister. Disgusting stuff, really.
He did all kinds of things. He did to another set of twins who obviously did not survive. He connected their blood veins to see what happens if the blood moves, streams from one body to another, and obviously they died. He did inject all kinds of solutions into eyes with black color, trying to change the color to blue. Obviously failed. With the children, I know, he put them in freezing water for a long time to see what happens to them, and then putting them in very hot water to see what happens to them, and then putting them in the ice outside during the winter for 24 hours to see what happens to them, and compare it with the twin brother. If one of the twins died during the experiments, then Mengele would put a needle straight into the heart of the other twin and kill him so that he could run a post-mortem. So every twin knew that if his brother or sister die in the experiments, then their fate is the same.
Now, you're trying to help one of the survivors,
Yes.
a twin, and his name is Menachem Bodner. Tell me about Menachem Bodner.
He was 4.5 years old when he was liberated from Auschwitz. He was a Mengele twin together with his brother, twin brother Joli. I met Menachem 2 years ago, quite coincidentally. When I heard his story, I got curious about it, and very quickly I realized that he was a Mengele twin who didn't know who he was, meaning he had a lost identity because he was too young to remember. He was traumatized by the time he was liberated, and he forgot his name, his parents, where he was born. He was adopted by a name whose surname is Bodner, Moshe Bodner, a Polish man who's a survivor as well. And they ended up living in Israel, and he wanted to find his twin brother. And in order to find his brother, I said, well, we have to know who you are.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, we cannot find anyone. And that's how I started looking into his biological identity.
So he understood that his adoptive parents were his biological parents, isn't that true?
He thought for a long time that until his early 20s that his father, his adoptive father, was his biological father. He wasn't sure about his mother because he had a flashback of a blonde mother from his childhood, except that his adoptive mother, who was blonde, she was too young. She was about 14 if she was pregnant with him, and he said that was too young. So only when he was 23 or so, he confronted his parents and he said, "Please tell me the truth." And that's when they told him that they actually adopted him.
Can you give me his history? Where is he from? How did he end up in Auschwitz? How did these people come to adopt him?
Menachem was born 74 years ago in a little village named Stroino, with an S in the beginning, Stroino. This is 6 kilometers away from a little town named Svaliava, and this is in Bereg district, which is today in Subcarpathia area. Now it is in the Ukraine. During Second World War, it was Hungarian, and that's where he was born, into a family his parents were Ignaz and Rosie, and he already had an older brother. His name was Jacob. And 2 years later, another baby was born. His name was Joseph. So there were 4 brothers in that family. And then in 1944, 70 years ago, the Hungarian gendarmes, the police, came and took all the Jews away in trucks or whatever and took them into a ghetto. And from the ghetto, they sent them into Auschwitz. So Menachem Bodner and his twin brother and his baby brother and his mother ended up in the hands of Mengele.
And what happened to them?
The mother had gone through the anthropological measurements. Mengele wanted to see if there are specific measures, body measures, length of the nose, distance between the ear and the eyebrow, etc., and the ankles, and I have the whole list of what he measured. This was part of what she was going through. This is the only thing I know that she was going through. The children were undergoing other things. They were experimented. The only things that I know from the records are that they were taking a lot of blood. I don't know what for. Then the mother was, after a while, the mother was separated from the children and she was transported elsewhere to another camp. And later on to another camp. She was in 3 or 5 camps altogether until she was liberated, whereas the children remained in Auschwitz with Mengele all the way to the end.
And does Menachem have any memory of this?
He doesn't have a daytime memory. He has a nighttime memory.
He must have known he was in Auschwitz because, as I understand it, all of the inmates of Auschwitz were branded with a number.
Yeah. He knows that he was in Auschwitz. He also knew that his adopting father told him that according to his number, they could tell him that he was from somewhere in Hungary, because they could connect the tattooed number, prisoner number actually, with the transport number.
And what was his number?
And Menachem's number is 7734.
And that's branded onto his forearm, is it?
Oh, yeah.
He was a twin, as you said. Did he know he was a twin? And I believe an identical twin.
We believe that he was an identical twin, but we don't have his photo. Menachem always had a feeling that he had a twin brother, but he never spoke about it to anyone. And this is also typical of Holocaust survivors. They didn't like speaking about the old days, of that period. Yeah.
So when was he liberated from Auschwitz, and what happened to his brother and his younger brother? As you said, his mother was deported or removed to another facility. What happened to her? What happened to his father?
His father and Jacob, the older brother, perished. I don't know exactly where. I don't know if it was in the crematorium of Auschwitz or maybe earlier in a mass killing or of some sort. The mother was, she really went through hell. She was in a few camps. She ended up in a chemical camp in Germany. At liberation, she started traveling back to Strojno and Svaljava, to that area, so that every survivor went back home to see if they can find their family, see who survived. That was the big question. And there, she went back there, and there she started settling down and waiting for her sons, and looking around for them and sending letters and receiving letters, until she was murdered. She helped me a lot. She left traces everywhere, and part of my investigation around Menachem and his history was following that mother. And she left traces everywhere, so it was easier for me to find his family through her own documents. You know, like, can give you an example, like when she was, like I knew that she was liberated because I found her in a Soviet list of liberated people in the area of Svaljava, that little town that I mentioned in the beginning. And there she mentioned herself. We knew that she survived, and the names of her 3 sons, the twins and Joseph, the little baby. She didn't mention Jacob, and the Soviets listed them as survivors.
So she survives this awful hell called Auschwitz. She makes her way back home after liberation, and some nutcase, for whatever reason, murders her.
Yes.
It's extraordinary, isn't it? The children, Menachem then was adopted by these nice people, as you say, who didn't tell him anything about his background, and he was still young enough at that stage probably not to fully understand and appreciate what he had gone through. They didn't tell him anything until he was in his 20s. But how did he learn that he had a brother there, or did he have a memory of a brother, a twin brother, did he say to you?
He had a memory of a brother. As for Menachem, he was taken out of camp, I think that a few days before. Well, this is the story that was told to him by his adoptive father, that he was taken out of camp before the Soviets arrived to liberate it. There was a week when there were no Nazis in camp, and the Soviets did not arrive yet. And the local Polish people started coming into Auschwitz and taking children in order to try and save them, because they were sick and hungry. So Menachem was one of them. He was taken by whoever adopted him later, but that guy was a survivor himself, so he put Menachem in care of a Catholic friend of his from before the war, until he settled down with an apartment and the ability to feed a child. Meantime, he tried to look for the child's family. At that time, he didn't know that he was a Hungarian. He thought that maybe he was Polish. And that action in itself of taking Menachem meant separating him from his twin, unknowingly. So at that point, Menachem was living in a house 4 kilometers away from his twin brother, unable to say anything. But later on, when he was already with his adoptive father, who later on repatriated him from the Catholic, they saw a march of the Soviet army, and everybody was cheering and hurraying, and the little Menachem, who was 5 years old at the time, already started speaking, and he said to his adopting father, "I don't like them." And his father said, "Well, why? They saved us." And so Menachem said to him, "Yeah, but they didn't save my brother Joli." And that's how the adopting father discovered that Menachem had a brother.
Which brings us to why we're talking today, because you are searching and helping Menachem find his long-lost twin brother on Facebook.
Yes, that's correct. Now that we know we know the family history, and already Menachem has a biological family that I put him together with, I turned into searching for his twin brother. Now, I found evidence that Joli was checked by a Red Cross Polish doctor more than a week after liberation in Auschwitz, meaning he was alive. It's not as if we hope that he survived. We know that he came out of Auschwitz alive. when I started looking for him in archives, I said to Menachem, well, look, this is going to take a long, long time. What do you think? And he said, well, he was usually very inhibited, and he didn't want to expose himself, and he was unsure of a lot of things. And all of a sudden he said, well, why don't you go and expose the story out there in the internet? And he gave me permission to do it. So I decided I didn't know anything technically about Facebook. I didn't know the power of Facebook, but I knew that the internet is powerful. So I opened a page, searched for A-7734.
And that was his number in Auschwitz, branded onto his arm.
Yeah, that's Joli's number. I don't know if he's a lost identity case, just like Menachem. He could be Gerard O'Patrick, as far as I know.
Yeah, because Menachem's real name is Elias, isn't that correct?
Elias Gottesman.
Gottesman. And his number was A-7733.
33,
and
yes.
his twin brother, Joli Gottesman, was A-7734.
Yes.
And, you would think it would be easy to find somebody, because he is more than likely the only person in the world with that number branded onto him.
Absolutely.
So you would think it would be easy. Did you have any success? When did you launch the Facebook page, and have you had any success?
Oh, well, success is, how do you define success?
You find a person, I suppose.
Well, to find a person, it's not easy, apparently. The page was published in March last year. Ever since then, I did get a lot of leads and tips about other stories, and also messages from people who thought they may be Joli and they wanted to check it, or people who were thinking that another person was Joli and they wanted to check it. And we check every direction. Hopefully Joli did not remove the number on his arm like some survivors did. It's in a way, it's like looking for a needle in a haystack.
I believe he was very close to a relative at a gathering of Auschwitz survivors on one occasion who was looking for his family, and they didn't know.
Yes, true. Menachem had a cousin named Aryeh. Aryeh was about 10 years older. He had good memories of his own family, and he survived the war. He came back to the same area, and he knew about the existence of twins in that family. Nobody else remembered because people were spread, and also the older people didn't survive, so it was just the younger people in their memory. But he did remember the existence of twins, and he started looking for them all his life. He didn't know who survived, but he was looking just like me. He was looking for the answer, and it was some sort of an obsession for him. He was really contacting a lot of organizations around the world. And also he was a lead for me because I followed him later on. And apparently Aryeh was in the conference of the Mengele twins that was arranged in Jerusalem in 1985. And a lot of Mengele twins came there. Aryeh also came there with a big plaque where he wrote Gottesman, Elias, Joli, and the numbers. Big letters. And he was standing there in the hall at the entrance waiting for people to look at it. And Menachem was there. He walked by, he passed by him, and he didn't notice.
Isn't that extraordinary?
Yeah, well, and when I discovered Aryeh and I tried to call him, I tried for more than a week, calling him at least 3 times a day, morning, midday, evening, at least, and there was no answer. And at first I thought maybe he's on holiday, and then maybe he was old and in home care, special care place. And then I decided to look for his children, and I tracked one of his sons, and I called him. I said, look, I'm looking for your father. This is who I am. And I gave him the short, in a nutshell, the story. And that man said, well, my father died 2 weeks ago, and now we're in mourning. The Jewish ceremony of resting for, not working for a period of time is part of the mourning. And this was the time that I called, when they didn't know whether to be happy or to be sad. But we met 2 weeks later, and that was an interesting reunion.
So Menachem is still looking and hopes to find his twin brother before he dies, I'm sure.
Obviously, yeah.
Why are you doing it? What's your interest?
It started with this horrible notion of realizing, this realization that the war is not over for some people. For a person like Menachem, it's been 70 years since liberation, or almost 69 years since liberation, and this man is still at war, you know. I decided that somebody needs to help him, as I help some other people, to find resolution. I promised Menachem that I'll find Joli dead or alive, hopefully alive. But I said I want an answer to the question, what happened to him from Auschwitz? How did he disappear?
Well, the Facebook page is A-7734. There are more details on our website, RTE Mooney. And if you want to have a look at it, and you might know friends abroad, you may have heard of stories or whatever the case may be. Ayanna, thank you very much indeed. And we have some pictures on our website also. And you believe that if Joli is alive today, he would look very similar to his brother?
Well, I can't say that. I surely hope that he looks the same. Maybe he has glasses.
Maybe he has glasses,
Maybe.
yeah. And hopefully he is alive. But either way, you want an answer.
Yes.
Anyway,
definitely.
The Looking for Joli Facebook details are on our website, rte.ie/Mooney. It's an amazing story, and the very best of luck with your research, and I hope you get some resolution.
Thank you.
Ayanna,
thank you so much for your time.
Not at all. Thank you very much indeed for talking to us today. That website address again, rte.ie/Mooney.